So my name is Micah Christian, and I'm a person living in recovery today. I was a severe opiate addict for many, many years, and this is what I am today. I'm a father, I'm a brother, I'm a son, etc. My childhood was everything but normal. I come from parents that were addicts and alcoholics. I experienced some trauma in my life. My grandmother lost her life to a tragic car accident, and after that, it was pretty rocky. My mother came back into the picture. Still looking back on it now, I understood, with my own struggles, that my mother was struggling with addiction at that time. Then I didn't understand, but now I do. And not long after she came back, after my grandmother's death, my mother was drinking and driving. And 15 months after I lost my grandmother, my mother was killed drinking and driving. So, it was tough. Not long after that, I was introduced to marijuana, alcohol, a substance, and of course, like so many I've heard before, I took that drink, I took that smoke, and was like, wow, where'd this come from? I thought it was the best thing, and after that, just catapulted me into a whirlwind of lies, manipulation, not understanding, not knowing how to love, not knowing how to cope. Basically, that's how my childhood went. My father didn't quit drinking until I was about 17. By that time, I was already so far into my addiction, there was pretty much no turning back. And my childhood was anything but pleasant, let's just say.
Can you describe that first use that you remember? So it could be an opiate, it could be,
my first use of opiate. So I'm a believer in Jesus Christ today. That's my faith. And I've heard it said before, my first use of opiate then would be like someone kissing the face of Jesus today. Could you imagine what he means to me? So it's almost like complete utopia. I was like, wow, this is what it is. I don't have to feel anything. I don't have to think anything. It makes me be able to talk to people. It makes me excited. I can be this, I can be that, I can be anything I want. And that's about where my first use, from what I can remember, led me, not knowing where it was going to lead me today.
Right.
So,
you share a moment that you remember that your addiction had become problematic?
There's many that I can point out today, but one that has always stood prevalent with me, that I knew that it was very, very serious, is when I took from my own children to fuel my addiction. And looking back on that, it was hard. I basically stole from my family and the mouths of my children in order to feed my addiction. And it's just, that was one incident. It's horrible, man. It's horrible. I'll get emotional, So, but there's many, prison. I spent some time, my addiction led me to prison, and lying to my family members when I can look, my father and people directly in the eyes and lie to them, and then try to lie to myself, because there's always that point where you're like, yeah, you got that lie, but you can't lie to yourself. And when just many forms of things that led me to bad.
What was your prison experience like, if you don't mind sharing?
Initially, my prison experience was horrible. I went in at a young age. My oldest son was 11 days old when I went to prison. And I was young myself, and I was scared, and I was lost, and I didn't know what was going to happen. And I went to the big boy. I always thought, I have a son that's 18 today, and I'm looking at him, and it was just I was 20 when I went to prison, and I see where he's at, and I could only imagine. And the first couple years I got there, I thought I had to prove something. I thought I had to fight. I thought I had to do this. I had to do that. But over time, I got into some programs and into some like rational substance abuse therapy and some things that they offered within the prison. And it wasn't always easy. You have that old cliche where certain individuals say, "Oh, that's where snitches go," or this or that, not understanding. So I had that pride and ego. So I fought that until finally a couple of the old timers in the prison that were never getting out were like, "You got a chance to go home, young man." And and then they led me down there. Still to this day, those old men are still my friend. I'm like grateful for them. And think about that. They're on this side and I'm grateful for those men because they were like, "You're going to go do it, or we're going to make your life a living hell in here." And I'm like, "You ain't going to make." But looking back, they forced me to go to that program, and ultimately it led me to parole, and it led me to some respect. It's almost like I grew up coming from a childhood where there was so much trauma. It's almost like prison, in a sense, taught me how to become a young man. Showed me respect and honor, and as crazy as it sounds, you know what I mean? That was my experience, and it was bad, but it was also good. It saved my life, and it showed me some things. So I got introduced to a 12-step program that had been around for 100 years early on in life. And some of the old timers in the program used to be like, "You're just a pigeon. You don't know nothing. Shut up. You need to listen." And like, you give me this predisposition. I was like, if I have to get sober and clean and I have to sit around and be like that, there is no way that I'm getting clean and sober. I'm not doing it. Failing to realize that they were right. I needed to shut up and listen, but I was so early that and held on to that stigma, like, I'm just going to be a boring old man. I'm just going to sit in a room full of people, and we're going to go around and share how our wives left us and how much we drunk, and I'm just going to be miserable. And I was like, no, I'm not going to do it. So that's the one that stands out the most. That kept me on the outsides of the rooms for a long time.
Okay. You described that moment when you decided to seek help, like really surrender.
I can. The moment that I decided to truly surrender was I'd overdosed. The one and only time. A lifelong opiate addict. I overdosed. And I was behind the wheel of a car. I just got off of work and I was by myself. And then I, went to the place, copped the drugs. And when I woke up, when I come to, I was being shoved in the back of an ambulance. And I had went down a hill in between two parked cars and hit a hill, and I guess fell out over the steering wheel. Kids running around, like, what a means of grace. Like, nobody got hurt, nobody got touched. It was like it's like a supernatural power protected me. So my experience with EMT and officers and things like that of my past has always been kind of unpleasant. So while they're shoving me in the back of this ambulance, I remember coming to, and the Narcan me. Thank God for Narcan. I don't want to shift, but I'm a huge Narcan advocate. It saved my life, helped to save my life. They shoved me on here, and the EMT driver looked at me. He's like, "We're going to help you. You're going to be okay." And I looked over, and it's another EMT driver I used to work with. And he was like, "Mike, is that drugs on you, or is that sheetrock dust on you?" I remember that was what he said, because I was doing construction, and I was like, "Hey, that's sheetrock." He was like, "I know." And I heard him say, "I know who this guy is. Let's help him." So that was pleasant. So we get to the hospital, and they put me in that clear room, and they're checking me all out. And I remember saying, "I have to call my wife. I need to call my wife. I need to call my pastor." And I knew my wife was going to be highly upset, but I had to call her, and of course she was highly upset. She come up there with my pastor there. She's hurt, you know, and she comes in that room, she's screaming at me and telling me, you know, scared to death, you know. My pastor's out there, he's scared to death too, one of my senior pastors. So there's a crack in the door, and I see the officer standing out there, and he opens the door and he comes in there, and he looks at my wife and he says, he seems like a good man. He says, if you would put God in the center of y'all's relationship, he could help you. Walk back out and shut the door. I'm like, so I didn't process all that until later on. And once I processed it, immediately that following day I submitted. I went to a treatment center. But that's the moment that I knew that I wasn't going to turn back. It's that I wasn't going back to addiction, that I was ready to surrender. When I went out, all I could remember was darkness. And when I processed, when I woke up and after I got to treatment, because it took me a while, I got to treatment, I had to go through the motions and the behaviors, and that's a whole nother story. When I got to treatment, you know, my mouth was, you know, and I was angry. They took like visits and everything. Like I was forced to sit in a room for 6 weeks. All I could do was to go to group and read. No visits between. It was pretty serious, but it was like my alone time. And I finally come to the conclusion that I don't want to go out of this world in darkness. I want to know that I'm slipping out of this world. And I surrendered. I said, okay, what do I need to do? So since then, life has just kept getting better, you know. I got to treatment. I went through the program. I surrendered. Somebody seen some potential in me. Give me a job as a resident tech at the treatment facility, you know, and you can only imagine what that looks like from day to day. And so that's where I started. And then, you know, I kept putting in the work and kept showing up even when I didn't want to. I kept doing my job, and I kept trying to pour into others and just be like, hey, and somebody seen some more in me and decided to buy my schooling so I could be a counselor in Ohio, and paid for that for me, and sent me to some training, and that catapulted into the job that I have today. I'm a marketing director for a treatment facility. I'm a missions coordinator as well. I wear a few different hats there. It's just part of the job, which I absolutely enjoy. I'm a leader in my church. I'm a worship drummer, director of security at our church. That keeps me plugged in. I keep myself surrounded. So that's my path to recovery. My path to recovery is spiritual and evidence-based as well. You know, it's a mixture of things, you know. I wake up every day and I decide, am I going to go right? Am I going to go left? You know, I surrender to self daily. You know, I still have my moments in my mind and my flesh where they're like, those fleeting thoughts, you know, still to today. But I'm like, I've learned to play the tape all the way through. I try to pour into others. I extend myself. Best way, that's a huge part of my recovery path, is service to others. You know, I'm a certified peer supporter for the state of Ohio. I'm a CDCA holder. I attend men's groups, Bible studies, friends, fellowship. I just keep myself so immersed in it that's my path to recovery. You know, that's just submersion. I am a convicted felon from my past. This society, this world says, even though I've done my time, this world says that I'm a convicted felon. So when I started doing this job, I was like, well, I would like to get into the jails and see if we can start helping some people. I mean, I fought it. I was like, well, they're not going to let me in there. I'm just not even going to make the call. And I thought that stigma of me being a felon would stop me from being able to do something like that. I guess it's a stigma I kind of held on my own, on myself, and that stigma is there for some. But I made the call. The guy at the jail, the administrator, he was like, "Yeah, come on over, come on in." I'm like, "What?" You know what I mean? I'm like, "Are you serious?" Yeah. And then not only that one, but another one opened up and was like, "Yeah, come on over. We got to break the stigma."
We do.
People are getting stuck, and they're getting stuck in places that are not okay just because of a stigma. Whether that be mental health, addictions, anything. And it's just not right. We're dealing with people, and
we're all human.
Right, we're all human. We all would bleed the same color. It's like I'm not going to. It's just insane. So whatever we got to do to break that stigma. Right. Everybody work together.
Describe a feeling that you have received through your recovery that was not there during your addiction.
So I had a God-shaped hole in my heart for many, many years. The second that I surrendered to a relationship with my Creator and allowed His will in my life, it's hard to even explain the feeling. I've done a lot of drugs in my life, and I've participated in a lot of activities to feel things, but there is no greater feeling that I've ever experienced, and I've never took a drug or alcohol that gives me the feeling that my Creator gives me, or the feeling that I get when I'm sitting across from somebody and they're like, "You helped me today, you helped me be a better person," or "You helped me get my kid back," or "You have been there for me and been a vessel." There's no other greater feeling. So yeah.
What have you learned from your addiction?
It's very real. It affects a lot of people. It's very powerful. I've learned that about it, but I've also learned through my addiction to be a better man, to be a better person, to be more compassionate, to be more forgiving, be open-minded. I think I've learned to be a human through my addiction, like just what humanity is and just what it stands for. It's just, I've learned a lot through my addiction. As long as there's breath, there's hope. There is help out there. If you're willing to reach out, if you're willing to go to any recovery place, social media, the internet, there's no reason that anyone should stay stuck in addiction today. There's churches, there's hospitals, there's resource centers. So I'd encourage everybody to reach out. There's somebody probably standing on your corner right now that is more than willing to help you if you'll just reach out. I used drugs and alcohol and that lifestyle for 23 years of my life. A lot of people counted me out. They said I was a lost cause. But I'm a true believer. If it could be done for me, it could be done for anybody. So don't stay stuck. Reach out. I work for Angels Harbor. We are a 90-day faith-driven substance abuse treatment facility in southeastern Ohio, right outside of Belpre. It's a Vincent address. We help females that struggle. We're behavioral health certified. While the girls are there, they would experience group, individual counseling. They would get to meet with a case manager. We offer peer support services. They live in-house, life skills, beauty parties, these girls, and I didn't understand that at first, when it come to that, but, now I understand some of these ladies and girls, they never had that. And there's multiple things, it's real easy for us to get real clinical about things, and which is fine, you have to have your groups, but what about the other stuff, like taking care of yourself and life skills and learning how to cook again and clean and do that and make appointments, follow through. So they'll learn all those skills while they're there as well too. Then we have the faith side of things. Church is offered to them. There's multiple things. Angels is a wonderful place. I've been to many, and I'm not just being biased because I work there, and that's who I run with. I've been to many treatment facilities over the years, and this is bar none one of the best that I've seen operate as far as culture, validity, personality, correctly. You love, support, in it for the outcome, not the income. You're not just another number. You're not just a bed. You're not just a date. You're like a person. And we want to. And I believe in the vision. I believe in it wholeheartedly, or I wouldn't be there. I know I wouldn't be there. So,
Awesome.
Angels is awesome.
Awesome.
My name is Micah, and I'm on the road of recovery.
Perfect. Awesome. Very good.